Hi, and welcome to another part a day video. So this is the part we're going to create today. This part contains a number of what we would refer to as non-sketched features. There are fillets down here, so they're calling out a 4 by fillet, so there's a fillet here, 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 and here that have a radius of 0.0625. Then there is a number of holes, and they're identical to each other. So this is a linear pattern. And this call out here, this is called a hole call out, is telling us that the holes have a diameter of 0.375, and that each hole is also going to have a chamfer on it, a 45-degree chamfer, and that chamfer is going to go on both sides of the part. The dimensions here have much more than the 2 standard decimal places we've been using, so we're going to set the decimal place default to 4 decimal places, and we're also going to come and change some of these dimensions back to only 3 decimal places. We're assuming that these dimensions have a specific reason to be called out to these values, so we're going to recreate that in our drawing and our part itself. And the last thing, there is symmetry in this part. So what we're going to do is only going to sketch half the part and create half the part, and then we're going to use the mirror tool, again another non-sketched feature, to create the part. Alright, so let's get into it. And the first thing we're going to do is go over here into settings, and under document properties we're going to go into dimensions, and under primary precision we're just going to switch this to 4 decimal places. So we'll select OK. Okay, so let's start making the part. We're going to start sketching here on the right plane, and we're going to create a rectangle. So I'll go sketch onto my right plane. I'm actually going to use a center rectangle, but I'm not going to use a center rectangle and select the origin. But now when I create this, I'm actually just going to use the upper portion of the rectangle. And you'll see, again, you'll see why in a little bit. So the smart dimension here, the total height is 0.5, and the width is specified here as being 1.125. So I'll come back here and go 1.125. Now if you notice, these now all have 4 decimal places. I can change that over here under the property manager. So for this dimension, I can set the number of decimals to 3. And over here, I can select that one, select in the wrong location, and we can select the number of decimal places to be 3. So now we're going to go ahead and extrude this part, but I'm just going to extrude the top part, and the distance we want to extrude it is 6. So we'll go Features, Extruded Boss, and I'm going to flip the direction. I had previously made this part, so the extrusion depth was already set to 6, and for my contours, I'm just going to select the top half. Alright, so the next thing I can do is make this cutout and then put the fillets in. So you see that the cutout is 0.75, and this call out here of 0.375 is just specifically calling that these holes are on the center line. So the depth that we need to make the cut is actually utilizing the entire width of the part. So I'm going to show you how we can manage to work with that. So I'm going to create a sketch onto this plane, but I'm also going to create a center line. And in this case, just so we can see it, I'll make it horizontal and infinite length. I will select there. I'll hit escape to get out of it, and now we have our center line. So we're going to create a rectangle, corner rectangle, and when I know that I need to make a rectangle that's going to be centered, I'll sometimes just make it over here without selecting anything, and then come ahead and now select the center point, hold down my control key, in this case I'll select the origin, and make those vertical. And then I'll select this line, this point, and I can come up. Notice that if I try to select the line, I don't get a collinear relationship. It won't do that automatically, but if I select the point, I can get a coincident. All right, so the width of this part is 0.750. So we'll go ahead and make that 0.750. And over here in the Property Manager, I can again set its decimal places to 3. And now we need to go to the Smart Dimension tool and put this width in. Now you'll see why I put the center line in. Because I'm going to select here, I'm going to select the center line and I'll pull down below it. So now this gives me a dimension that is symmetric around the center line, and I'm going to make that 0.4375. So that gives me my sketch, and I'll now do a Features Extruded Cut, and I'll go through all. All right, the next thing we need to do is put in our fillets. So we'll select the fillet, which is over here in your non-sketched features. So I'll select the fillet. Again, I made this part once before, so I already have the radius as 0.0625 inches. So all I need to do is come in here, and for fillets, we don't select faces. If I selected the face, it would try to fillet everything. And in this case, it would fail because there's not enough material here. So I just want to select that edge and this edge. And again, notice that I'm zooming and rotating with my scroll wheel and my middle mouse button, which of course is the scroll wheel. And I will say OK. So now the next thing we need to do is put in my circles here. And you'll notice that we have a distance from the front of the part, and then this 0.6966 is going to be the distance between each of the subsequent circles. And the circles are on a center line, and they have a diameter of 0.375. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to create a sketch. I'll select this plane. And I could put the center line in, but I really don't need to, because I can just select my circle here. And then I can select the center point. I can hold my control key down and select the origin in this case, and we can make those horizontal. Putting my 2 dimensions in, the diameter is going to be 0.375, and I can set those decimals, that decimal place to 3. And the distance is going to be 0.5619. So I'll select the circle and the edge, and we'll set this to being 0.5619. So that circle is now completely constrained. So I'll do the cut as through all. So I'll do Features, Extruded Cut, and we're going to go through all. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to put the chamfer on, and the way this is called out is 0.0625 is, I'm going to come in here and make this picture a little bit larger so that we can actually see what we're doing over here. So this is the diameter, and then the fillet call out, or rather the chamfer call out, is 0.0625 by 45 degrees. So what this is essentially saying is that we're making a triangle where the legs of the triangle are 0.0625 and the hypotenuse is at a 45 degrees angle. So that's kind of the standard way these fillets are called out. So we're going to go ahead and again go to our non-sketched features location, and the chamfer is located under the fillet. It might be different in your particular setup, but that's kind of where it is set up on sort of the standard situation. So there's different chamfer types. The default one is a distance and an angle. So once again, I had already had this pre-populated. So the distance is 0.0625, and the angle will always standard be 45 degrees. Once again, you can have these set up that sometimes there might be set up as a no preview. I would recommend that you always, especially as your parts are simple, set yourself to full preview. So now all I need to do is select the edge, and we've created our part. All right, so I just want to demonstrate that what this chamfer actually is, and the way I'm going to do that is so that we can actually measure these things accurately is I'm going to actually cut this part, and then we'll So we'll create a feature where we cut the part in half, and then we'll come back and do our measurements, and then we'll suppress that feature. So I'm going to create a sketch onto this surface, and we're going to do this in a specific way. I'm going to use a line tool. I'll make it infinite length, I'll make it vertical, and I'll select at the origin. So when I make it infinite length and vertical, I don't have to put any dimensions on it. And now when you have a single line, we can use it as a cutting tool. So I will do Features, Extruded Cut, and nothing happens. But if I select the direction to be through all both, son of a gun, that doesn't work. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to create a sketch onto this plane, but just a single line. Let me explain. So I'm going to right-click and create a sketch. I'll use my line tool, and I'll come up from the bottom, and I'm just going to drop it somewhere near the top. And just so I want this to be fully defined, I'll select here and here. Well, I got the center point, but that's okay. And now this line is now the width of the part, or the height of the part. So now I'm actually going to use this. This doesn't look like much, but I can use this as a feature, an extruded cut, and you'll see that it wants to go all the way through the part. So the typical call out might be through all both, so you make sure that you get everything here. And we can decide on which side we want to cut. You see this little arrow here? This is going to remove the part over here. If I flip the side to cut, it would remove the other material. But I want to flip this one, and I'll say OK. So there we go. We've cut our part in half. And now let's see why I wanted to do that in the first place. So I'm going to set my view orientation to here. And now I want to take a look at those distances. So I'll use Evaluate, Measure, and I'll measure from this point to this point, and we'll see that the distances here is 0.0625, so this leg of the triangle is 0.0625, and this is 0.0625, and that would imply that my angle here is 45 degrees. So hopefully that explains how the chamfers are dimensioned for you. So I'm just going to come back to this Cut Extrude 6, and I can suppress it. And now let's go on and continue making the part. So we need to do a linear pattern. So under Features, again in the non-sketched features location, I'll select Linear Pattern. And we have a couple things here. We're only going to go in one direction. So the direction, you basically select some line that will define the direction that we want our pattern to be. So I'll just select this line. And our spacing is going to be 0.6966, so we'll put that in here, 0.6966. And the number that we want is 8, so I can just use the up arrow to get to 8. And then it says Features and Faces. So now remember, there are two features here. There is the cutout, as well as the chamfer. You have to do them both at the same time. If I had left the chamfer out, which is what I'm going to do right now, and I try to put it in later, it won't work. So in this case, you can see the images here that I'm going to be putting in 8 holes. And we'll just say OK. And you'd say, well, oh shoot, I forgot to mirror my chamfer, make the pattern of my chamfer as well. So instead of going back to Edit, you might go back and create a linear pattern. Now, everything that you've just selected was here except for the direction, so I'll again select the direction. Under Features and Faces, you'll now select the chamfer, and everything looks good, and you'll go ahead and say OK, and it won't work, because what's happening here is that this chamfer was dependent upon this edge. And you'd say, but that edge exists over here too. Yes, but you're trying to essentially create these chamfers without specifying exactly where those edges are. It's, call it a bug or a feature of the program. So what we really want to do is go back to our original linear pattern. We'll edit it, and under Features and Faces, we'll just select the chamfer. So we're doing two features at the exact same time. All right, so now we're just about done here. Now all we need to do is mirror the part. Now, when you have a part like this that has complete symmetry, it's best to do it this way, because then what you're doing is, instead of mirroring a bunch of features, you're actually mirroring the entire body. So I'm going to select Mirror. It's asking for the face plane, or the plane that I want to mirror about. That's it. And you'll see that you have features, faces, or bodies to mirror. And in this case, the body is the entire part. And it's a much cleaner way of doing things. So I'll select that. And there's our part. Okay, so the last thing we can do is check the mass properties. So we'll find out that the volume is 2.68 cubic inches and the surface area is 22.55 square inches. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Part a Day. Once again, I will post the drawing file and the Solidworks model up to my Google Drive, and hope you'll check back again.